and action. Hello there, welcome to my greenhouse, and we're going to pot up some crocus today. So when planting crocus, here's a very quick tip for you. I've got a bag of bulbs here. If it doesn't say on the packet how deep to plant a bulb, the general rule is normally 3 times the depth of the bulb if you are planting into the ground. So it'd be 3 times that little depth there, okay? However, if you're planting a container or a pot or something like that, you can often get away with planting them shallower if they don't grow particularly tall, especially. Now, these are crocus bulbs I'm planting very late. I'm planting it right at the beginning of January. Normally we'd be planting them in autumn or fall for our American friends. And the bulbs would not normally be anywhere near as long with these tips. They would normally be quite short. So for instance, it's quite a short tip there. And the reason I'm planting them so late is that I ordered these at the beginning of December, getting a bargain on them because obviously you're meant to have planted them by then. We also had some supply issues coming into the UK where a lot of bulbs were not getting into the country as quickly as we'd like because of our friend Brexit. And the other reason was that I wanted to demonstrate that you can plant them as late as December and they grow. However, it's January now. Not a lot I could do about that. They arrived New Year's Eve. So I'm going to take a container like this first. This is the first one I'm going to demonstrate, and this is handy because this was the Christmas chocolates. Just going to take the lid off this plastic tub. So I'm just going to drill in some small holes first. Not too many. There we go. Now obviously these tiny little holes aren't going to be enough. They're what I call a pilot hole. Now I'm just going to change the drill bit for a larger drill bit. Okay, now my larger drill bit. So I've drilled my holes there with my larger drill bit. And some of you might be thinking, oh, well, I'm not sure about having nice bulbs in a pot like that. Well, I think it's quite funky, but the good thing about containers like this is you can sink them into the soil or into a plant pot. So if you have a larger pot, you can just pop it into there. So what's quite favourable is that sometimes you could have maybe a plant pot, you'll plant them up, you'll keep them protected somewhere like in a greenhouse or in a cold frame, somewhere where the squirrels or rodents won't be able to get to them if that's a problem with you, and then you can sink them into something more ornate and have them in there, and you can cover over the plastic edge just with a bit of soil so it's in there with the, and you don't actually see the plastic because it's sunken in there, and you can do that as easily in a pot or in the ground. So now I've got this container. I wouldn't personally be worried about lining this with bits of broken pot or what have you to block the holes. I think that it's going to be fine how it is, especially with the compost mix I'm using. So the best stuff you could use would be proper bulb fibre, which you can buy in the garden centres. So I've kind of made my own through all the different peat-free composts that I've had over the year and the sievings. So what I've done is when I'm sowing or something like that, I've used a sieve to sieve the compost I've got, and I've ended up with all these bits like this, and they've gone into tubs and they've given me quite a fibrous mix. I've also then, you know, little bits of, if I've had a bit left in the potting tray which is a bit dusty or whatever, I've thrown that in there. And I've also thrown the odd bit of Miracle Grow slow release 6-month feed in there, which Isn't really needed, but it will just give them a little bit of a boost. And like I say, it was bits that were just left in this potting deck as I've been working on things. So what I'm going to do is just tip that in there. Now what I do is I just give it a tap. That's just to firm it down a little bit. I'm going to now wet this compost. Normally I'm a fan of wetting my compost before I put it in the container, but actually for this it makes no difference. So you'll see that the water is just gradually seeping through. You'll notice no compost is coming out of there, so again, because it's a fibrous mix, I haven't needed to cover those holes, but it's still draining nicely, so the bulbs aren't going to be sitting in water. Yeah, that feels pretty good, to be honest with you. I'm just going to now perhaps turn it over a bit. And again, I could have done this in my potting deck, which I would have normally done, but I figured this, if you haven't got a potting deck, you're going to need to know it, how to do it without one. So it feels moist all the way through now, so just give that a tap. That's why I keep this towel here. Right, okay. So that's pretty good. I'm fairly happy with the level of that as well, so that when I actually now put my crocus on, yes, it's not 3 crocus deep, so you can imagine 3 times the depth. It's higher than the pot there. This is more, you know, sort of almost on top. So now all I'm going to do is, now I find the best way to get a natural effect is just to go like that, and then just do that. Then all I do is right them up, and the right way up is pointy end up. So you'll see these little pips there, and sometimes you'll see the little roots at the base, but generally with a crocus it's flatter on the bottom. If in doubt, plant it on the round edge, which is the side, but obviously it's going to have to then grow up around the side, but that's better than growing from upside down. But yeah, pointy end up, which is pretty much the case with every bulb. I'm just checking the quality of these bulbs as I go. That one's no good. It's all gone mouldy. There's no tip to it. It's not worth risking putting it in with the others, which is quite common this time of year. Sometimes with these bulbs the tips get knocked off, and particularly if you're planting them a bit late and they're a bit further along, I wouldn't worry too much about that. They'll quite often grow another one if you've got it in early enough. So I'm only really going to pull out ones which have looked really suspect with rot or whatever. And I think just by eye, now that I've checked, I think that probably I've just got one that needs to go in there just to make it right. So a quick count up, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 36 bulbs in there. Now I could leave them just like this, which, to be honest with you, I'd be very tempted to do. But I am going to just sprinkle a little bit of this dry compost now over the top. And that's just to hold them, particularly the smaller ones, in place. Very gentle water from above. Hold that there, just let that water drain through. And so what I should be seeing is the larger ones. You see these lighter tips just showing. So you've got them there. So they'll be sticking out. Some of the smaller ones will still be under cover there, but I'm only just covering them, and some are exposed, and that's ideal for when you're planting late and you're having them indoors. So now they will just go on a low greenhouse shelf, and I'll only water them if the compost starts getting really dry, and as they start to emerge with green shoots, I'll start watering them a bit more. So here are my crocus, my 36 crocus, all planted up, and I think that's quite a good trick, is try and plant as densely as you can when you're planting in this style. All I'm going to do now, pop them down on the greenhouse shelf and wait for about an inch of growth to come up. Once I've got that inch of growth, I can then decide, if the weather's not too frozen outside, I can then pop them out, either sink them in the ground so they're emerging from a ground level with a little bit of soil or compost over the top just to mask the plastic, or I can have them out on a table. I could sink them into a pot. And there we go. And cut.